What would you do if you were only paid based on the results that you produced for most of the jobs that you applied for? And what if most of the jobs were only based on income producing results? That means that you have to demonstrate your worth and your value as well. How do you think that could change you as an individual or not, or the impact it would have for society? Would it make any difference in your life for the positive or better? So welcome to the CfM Elite Lifestyle Business Community. Thanks for joining me. And as you're joining me, say hey, and remember to hit the subscribe button above. And I'll also get back to everybody who's connected as well. So this topic came up as I was coming back from shopping and spending a bit of time by the seaside. I was listening to Russell Branson, who specializes in funnels, sales funnels, click funnels, if you've heard of that. And one of the things that he was talking about in the podcast, it was about how people set up certain systems and processes and often give up when they have failed. And he was talking about how many times he has failed in life. So that's where this topic came from. Then I thought, what if most of the jobs were based on getting paid on results or commission based as well? How would that impact individuals? So for me, if you don't mind me sharing briefly, for me, I worked in a sector, public as well as corporate, over a 10-year period. And part of my fear and what held me back, I was an entrepreneur in that I progressed every 2 years, not even knowing that I was doing that. I also got comfortable in the process. While others saw me as somebody who was progressive, there was still something that made me comfortable. What made me comfortable was that even though I never wanted to go into a 9-to-5 in the first place, it was the stability of income. It was knowing that I had something to fall back on, even though I felt restricted. I was creative, but I felt limited within that role. And I always feared taking the leap to set up something of my own independently. I had so many innovative ideas, and some of the ideas I implemented like within my workplace, such as systems and processes, and also leadership and management. I took on those roles, and something that I feel like people also like motivated me or encouraged me based on the results that I was producing within that given environment, because I was focused rather than being consumed by stresses that some people would feel my focus on what was the next best thing that I could produce to make people's lives more easier or to add more value. Now, if you were to think on those terms, then possibly my thoughts are we would be more outward looking in terms of adding more value and become less complacent. We would also become less dependent on the things that tie us down. So the things that tie us down, as I've mentioned before, are like the monthly income, which can be great that you have something to fall back on, but it's also a dependency method as well, because it leaves you in a place where you're getting that income, which doesn't shift unless if you progress forward and further into your career. I also believe that the way our school systems were developed were, it's a myth, basically, a myth that we've all bought into. In reality, we've all gone to school and then gone into jobs believing that this is the best outlook. And I was raised that way as well, is that you go to school, you go to university, you find something that is a career. And in most cases, most people believe that this is where they'll retire, or a career is something that will give them the pension or whatever format. In other countries, you might use something to, after you've worked so many years, then you have something to rely on to retire. And I just started to discover more and more why it's a myth, is that it's made us more succumb to this dependency on when there's like economic crisis, then there's panic mode. And then there's also the fear that what if I lose my stability? And when you look at it, is that what if a crisis were to happen? What if an emergency were to happen? I was in a position where I've had to fly out a few times due to an emergency. And within those emergency situations, I never once thought about my job, which I cared about. I never once thought about my stability in terms of bills I had to pay. I just jumped on the next plane. I also found the resources and the mechanisms to be able to get me there. Now, if I was in the job like I was, there's something about the comfort level that encourages not to be in a response that is an emergency. When in reality, I believe that we should be looking at our lives as an emergency. We don't have to wait for something to happen as emergency. Reason being is that not to sound morbid, but a lot of people die with their creativity, their innovation, and also just their well-being, their sense of who they are in this world never gets explored. And those millions and millions of people are no longer here. They didn't have the opportunity to share their knowledge. So let me just give you some few points that I jotted down as to what the benefits would be. And I was also thinking in relation to when I took the first leap, I went into like a sales role. And this was a role that I feared. So when I went into this sales role, it was something that I did independently, following being in a career that was permanent, which I wanted to leave. But you have heard me mention before that also the additional motivational factor for me was when I hit a crisis point, is when I got diagnosed with a chronic pain condition. I decided that I wouldn't be suited to work in an environment which was going to make my condition worse. And I decided to part for like my well-being. So that also forced me to implement things that I'd always dreamt about doing. And the first thing I thought about that came to mind was for me to take a leap and confront my fear. And the fear was sales. So I feared selling to people. And I was thinking today, what was it that I feared? What I feared the most was hearing somebody hang up the phone, hearing somebody say no. That was my worst fear. But when I looked beyond it, and I also just started in, it was a business coaching role. And in that business coaching role, I also had to encourage other people, not encourage, but support them to come to their own decision and conclusion based on something that they had been looking for and they had been searching for. And they were looking to have a flexible lifestyle. So the common fears that I came, the common thoughts that I came across was also the fear and also the comfort level of having something stable. So as much as most of them wanted to take a leap, there was also something about hanging on to the stability of having a job. So when I confronted this fear about sales, I started to realize more and more that it wasn't necessarily about me. It was more about the value that I could add in terms of helping other people. And all my fears started to minimize, and my focus also became less about money. It became more about the experiences that I was having with those individuals. I also started to value other things more, and the things that I valued more were about the flexibility of being able to work independently and to produce results within less time. So I wasn't restricted time-wise in terms of as you would like in a permanent job. In a permanent job, you would be given, like, let's say, for instance, a contract, 37 hours, get paid the same salary every month. While in positions where you're paid by results, you are expected to deliver something. You determine the hours that you want to work. And also that created more opportunity for me to start valuing traveling more and taking experiences from being in different environments and learning about other cultures. And it opened another world to me in that sense. And I'm a born traveler either way. But then I noticed the difference was that materialistic things became less symbolic. And the reason why I'm sharing this is that the things that we hold on to, like these 9 to 5 jobs, I believe that there's valuable aspects like service-based jobs, definitely. Emergency services, people need to be paid guaranteed income because they're there in emergency situations supporting people. I also believe that there's certain jobs that should be paid on results, because I think what this would do is encourage more people who are the ones who are like entrepreneurs, who are looking to grow further but have certain fears. So organizations could then support them to maximize their innovative ideas and encourage that space for creativity and also flexibility for people to come and go and work in different environments. And this is what I always thought was also limited within environments that I worked in. And coincidentally, as I was leaving, they were reshuffling some of like the floors and buildings in terms of restructure, removing fixed working places and creating more agile working spaces, encouraging remote working. And that is something that also enables people to not feel restricted and to feel like they can work flexibly. So time would not be a factor. There would also be, I believe, there would also be less dependency on borrowing, because recently I went to Greece, and one of the things that I saw was, as some of you might be aware, is that Greece experienced a recession. And you can see that it's changing, and it has changed over time. And that's the feedback that I received from friends who are there. But what I noticed was the benefit of it is that there's more of people creating their own homely goods. Whether that's been like that for years, I didn't get the opportunity to ask. But there's something in when you're faced by adversity, you're forced to do certain things that you wouldn't normally think about. So in terms of creating their own homely products, growing their own crops, making I would say like materialistic things that were needed in the home environment, there's more of that. While if you're in an economy where you're dependent on things that are a lot more disposable, some of those things we can take for granted and not value them more. And then when you get into a position where you're forced to or to think differently, more innovatively and futuristic, which is about entrepreneurship and being more of embracing your life vision. There's something about valuing things more and spending less on things that are disposable and being more creative in terms of what you can produce for yourself. So if any of this is resonating, let me know what your beliefs are. Do you believe that this is something that could be beneficial, or do you believe that this is something that could be a huge risk? Based on you as an individual, if you're like in a paid job, for instance, that's guaranteed hours and you're getting your monthly income, or do you believe that if you were forced to be in a position where you had no option and the opportunities that were only available were based on income producing results, would you be more motivated to become to take more risks and less focused on being risk adverse? Do you think that you would maximize your greatest potential? I also believe that in terms of maximizing your greatest potential, there's something about being given the opportunity to add more value. Because one of the things I used to experience when I was in my work environment, I could see myself being out there doing something more than where I was, like in my boxed environment, my desk or in the building. I felt there was something restricting or limiting. And every time I was looking at creating something, there was always a barrier. And the barrier was administrative processes, sign off processes. Not to say that I wouldn't exist like in a business, but there's something about directly being able to offer services based on your creativity, based on you becoming your own boss in a way. So if you were even working for somebody, is somebody entrusting that you have the ability and capability to do that job and to give you this responsibility where you become, I would say, like a mini project manager for instance, and for the employers to feel confident that you can do that. The more you're able to do that, your income, and let's go the other way around, your value becomes more. So the value you add for to other people and the value within yourself and how other people view you as well. And I believe this is not something new. I believe that the people who live like millionaire lifestyles or actual millionaires, this is the way they think, is that they're not looking at the time that they're working. They're not restricted by that because most of the people have fallen into following their life passions, have gone into careers similar to me. I chose my career, but I knew that my career was my stepping stone to eventually becoming independent. So I needed that place where I could gain the skills in order to be able to launch eventually. So I never looked at like pensions as something that would guarantee my future, because I've come across people in the elderly or older people who've retired and are now currently struggling, and they had waited all their lives for this, believing that it was something that would offer them what they were looking for in terms of having the flexibility to travel more, to have more income. But that is not the case because the economy changes. So going back on the value, your value would increase because you would solely focus on producing income results and also changing people's lives. Be more free and have the flexibility to take more risks and learn from those lessons, rather than being in a place where you're like protected and not given the experience to actually explore what is the best that you can give according to your vision. That is also in line, if you're working for somebody else, in line with somebody else. But what I liked, for instance, in being in the sales role, I felt like I was in and business coaching, I felt like I was my own manager. I determined the hours, and also in terms of my income potential, it wasn't capped off. It was based on how much I wanted to work and also learn and develop. And I had to accelerate my learning in order to produce the results that I wanted to produce. And there was something that, in a component in that, is that you can't actually earn more without somebody not believing in you. So what the value was is that somebody saw the value in what I had to say, the value in what I had to offer. That then also prompted them to buy into what I had to offer. Okay, so I hope this is all making sense. This is just something that I was just thinking on as I was like walking, as I mentioned earlier on. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'm just trying to think if I've missed anything else. I will leave it off with here as that being independent, earning based on results, I believe that it could potentially become the future. I'm seeing more and more people, or maybe it's something that my eyes have opened to, because I belong to the digital nomad community. There's lots of people who are now looking for freer lifestyles. And I've always wanted to do that. But I think the way the tide is changing, the economy is embracing that more and more. And what I could potentially like hope for the future is that students, younger people are given more of an opportunity to learn entrepreneurship skills, so that it gives them more of a chance to be less dependent, more confident, and to be less dependent on systems which are meant to, I think, as I've mentioned before, they make us more dependent on, do not give us that much confidence. But I think there's something about in free will, being able to decide what your future will look like and going for that. Because I believe opportunity is everywhere for anybody. And I don't think just because somebody has made a choice, the world will fall apart if people decided they wanted to go for the particular job, that the career that they wanted to go to rather than job, because I believe there's a difference between a career and a job. I believe that service-based jobs will always be there because we need people to be doing those jobs, supporting people directly who are vulnerable. And obviously food-based jobs, emergency jobs will always be there. But there's something about having this larger pool of people being able to maximize the greatest potential, especially if you feel like you haven't had that opportunity. And the younger generation also are the ones who can play a greater role in helping with new innovative ways of thinking on a freer level. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to hearing your views. So I'll leave it here, and what was I going to say? Yes, I've uploaded other videos, so do look out for them on my timeline as well as my watch list. Bye for me for now.